I've seen the future, and it's not me. As a white American male, I represent less than 2% of the world's 7 billion people. The other 98%, often with vastly different cultures, views, and experience, will shape the world to a greater degree than ever before. I got my first taste of this at age 10 when my expat family lived in Caracas, Venezuela. There was one weekend my dad and I were walking the streets of that capital city. It was an incredibly hot day, and we took a wrong turn somewhere. We ended up almost kind of cornered by an angry mob. And you could just feel the hatred in their voices, see the anger in their eyes. They were shouting anti-American slogans. Coming from small-town America, all I could think was, why don't they like us? And that's why we need cultural intelligence, or CQ, so much in today's world. This new way of measuring our global effectiveness is something I use in my work every day. Just as IQ measures our intelligence quotient and EQ measures our levels of empathy, CQ tells us how well we're able to work with diverse groups of people. And we need it today more than ever because the problems that we face, things like global conflict, resource shortages, and climate change, can't be solved by one nation acting by itself. These long-term intractable problems can only be solved by unprecedented levels of cooperation between nations and people. So you might ask, who has cultural intelligence? Who's come by this thing already? And when you hear that phrase, you might think of people like international executives or prime ministers or high-ranking diplomats. But these people really aren't on the ground. They live and work in protected bubbles. In my own experiences, I've learned a lot more from the people that I meet on the street, the hotel employees, the street vendors, the taxi drivers. So you might ask yourself, what is cultural intelligence? What makes up this thing? When you talk to a lot of people, they think it's things like avoiding certain gestures, or knowing how to exchange business cards, or speaking a little bit of a foreign language. But these things are really just scratching the surface, and at heart, they're really defensive in nature. CQ allows you to develop something to go much deeper, develop much deeper levels of understanding. And you might ask where we find cultural intelligence. In my work traveling students around the world, a lot of people thought that you'd find it just by traveling and providing aid to other folks. But oftentimes, when you go try to assist people across cultural barriers, you actually create divisions between the fortunate and the less so. Think about it from the aid receiver's perspective. Oftentimes, what shows up is some college student or maybe a high school student who's going to come in and tell them how to live their life, how to build their houses, how to irrigate their fields. Well, this nationalistic way of thinking isn't going to get the job done anymore. If you look at what's happening in Europe, they have an ongoing crisis in the Eurozone. Their economy just continues to drag along. Nations are pushing and pulling against each other. The only way they're going to solve those problems is by working together. One of the really neat things about CQ is there's a science behind it that allows you to measure it and improve it. Unlike IQ and EQ, which are basically fixed. People or organizations like Google, the London School of Economics, the Ministry of Education in Singapore are all applying the science of CQ to things that they do every single day. In fact, Singapore, which is widely considered to have one of the top education systems in the world today, is building CQ into their core curriculum, making them even more of an international country. So people that own businesses, educators, policymakers, can take concrete steps to improve their cultural intelligence. And if it's something that interests you, there's 4 things you need to work on. You focus on drive, knowledge, strategy, and action. And when you're ready to have your cultural intelligence measured, build upon it, and implement it, you can go to the National Cultural Intelligence Center and be assessed. Being global in name and acting globally are 2 entirely different things. CQ is the key to our global future. Thank you.